thought I was going to die. Not a quick and painless death, but a slow, excruciating one, like the way my ship, the Odyssey, shattered into pieces in the dense atmosphere of an unclassified planet, Elaris. My body had been thrown out of the main cabin the moment the explosion hit. One side of my suit was torn open, the protective layer peeling off like flayed skin. I could feel each shard piercing into me, every impact as my body plunged through that strange atmosphere. Something not quite gas, not quite plasma. I had lost all communication systems, lost every navigational sensor, and lost blood. A lot. When I finally fell, the ground didn't catch me with rock or dust, but with something soft and slick like living skin. Elaris was unlike any world I had ever known. It felt like a breathing organism. Every inch of ground beneath my back pulsed with a living heartbeat. I crawled out from the scorched remains of my armor, trying to stay conscious, but each step grew heavier. My breath shallowed. My vision blurred under the flickering light radiating from the living stones around me. I was bleeding internally. My lungs burned. I collapsed in a glowing field of phosphorescent grass, waiting for my body to dissolve the way my armor had. But she came. I didn't hear footsteps. Only through the haze of my fading mind, a silhouette emerged through the red mist. She wore nothing, carried nothing. And yet I knew instantly. She wasn't human. Her skin shimmered silver, smooth like a layer of living enzyme, every motion woven from mist and moonlight. Her figure resembled a human woman, flawless, if not for her eyes. Those eyes had no pupils, only two glowing golden pools that seemed to reflect my soul. And her hair, if it could be called that, was composed of thousands of biosensitive strands, gently twitching like soft tendrils, emitting faint, wet sounds like underground streams flowing through living tunnels. She didn't speak a word. She didn't need to. As she approached, I couldn't move, yet I couldn't resist either. Part of me screamed that I had no idea what she was. But another part was pulled toward her with an ancient, terrifying instinct. She knelt beside me. Cold, but a comforting kind of cold. One hand pressed against my chest, where the armor had been torn away, revealing scorched, blistered skin. Her fingers were soft, damp, sticky. A clear, viscous fluid flowed from her fingertips, spreading over my wound. I tensed from the pain, but it transformed almost instantly into pleasure. Not the kind of pleasure you can explain easily. It was like a jolt of electricity stabbed directly into my spine, racing straight to my lower abdomen. Hot, numb, intoxicating. My pulse surged, and I felt my body start to react. I was ashamed. Bleeding out, slipping between life and death. And yet I was hard. She didn't flinch. Those golden eyes simply narrowed slightly, as if she had been expecting it. She leaned down, her bare body pressed against mine, each curve, each soft plane making direct contact with my wound, delivering enzymes into my bloodstream while making me shiver as if touched at the very core of my nervous system. Her mouth spoke nothing, but every point of contact whispered. I could hear it in my head, or maybe it was inside the streams of enzyme now crawling through my veins. Don't resist. I need the bond to heal you, and you need me too. She began sliding her mouth along my ribs, not like a lover, but like a living being reading data from every cell. The sensation was stranger than any touch I had ever known. Not sex, not healing, but dissolution. I started to feel her. From the inside. Each wave of her enzyme was hot and soft like water, yet spread like fire. They latched onto my nervous system, stretching every sense to its limit. She slid up my body from stomach to throat, then pressed her forehead against mine. And then, an influx of information, like a dream. I saw her memories, saw titanic storms of protein, saw her species nearly extinct, saw thousands of deaths from failed bonds, because her kind required a specific form of biological connection to survive. And I was the only one she had ever met who was compatible. God damn it. I whispered the words but couldn't pull away. Because by then, I no longer knew where she ended, and I began. The contact points were melting, like my cells no longer fought her enzyme but were opening to it. I heard her breathe for the first time, a strange sound like wind whistling through biological pipes. And then she spoke in a tongue with no words, but my heart understood. We have begun. I didn't know what would come next. I only knew that touch didn't just save me. It had sunk its claws into my soul. I woke up in a space bathed in dim pink light. No more cold, no more burnt arm or stench or the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. Only a scent, a faint, sweet fragrance that wasn't overpowering, like ozone after rain, mixed with the warmth of human skin and something else, alive. I was inside a biological cavern. No, more precisely, a soft cocoon formed from semi-translucent membranes, glowing veins running along the living walls. Everything around me was breathing. I moved, no pain, no numbness, and I didn't know why I was completely naked. My suit was gone, replaced by a thin transparent layer of enzymes spread over my skin, like a liquid garment. I sat up, and the first sensation was absence. The absence of something that had touched me so deeply it still echoed in my chest, yet was no longer beside me. I tried to call out. No sound came, just a hoarse breath slipping from my throat. And then she appeared, as if she had never left. She emerged from the inner membrane of the cocoon, her silver skin shimmering softly under the bioluminescent light. Still naked, but not erotic in a crude sense. She was like a sacred creature, pure, yet entirely primal. Her body needed no concealment, not because it was modest, but because it evoked desire not through lust, but through the pure biological instinct of a species that survived through touch and hormones. She came closer, kneeling beside me like before. Her hand touched my chest, where a deep wound had once festered, now reduced to a fresh patch of soft, damp tissue. I felt another stream of enzyme flowing from her hand, this time not burning, but warm, gentle, like a kiss. She leaned her forehead against mine, as if checking on something, but instead of stopping, she slid forward, her body gliding lightly onto mine. Her skin was smooth like water, yet applied subtle pressure. I could feel her every nerve ending, thousands of microscopic receptors firing signals into my brain. She wasn't just touching my skin, she was reading me. She knew what I was thinking, and she knew that I had begun to crave her. Not just because of the enzyme, not just because of the velvet softness, but because I had tasted life from her. Once wasn't enough. My body began to curl as she withdrew her hand. I trembled. Do it again, I whispered, lips dry, throat burning. I hadn't realized I was begging. She didn't answer, but her pupils dilated slightly and her body glowed brighter. Then she pressed her lips to my neck. It wasn't a kiss. It was a bonding ritual. From there, her enzyme surged into me like a rising tide. I tensed, but resistance only triggered a wave of insane pleasure. My erection throbbed to the point of pain, not from lust, but from my body responding to an alien biological mechanism I couldn't comprehend. She didn't touch it. Not yet. But every time her body slid against mine, I felt like I was burning. Her skin didn't just transmit sensation, it provoked, aroused, controlled. She extended her tongue, longer than a human's, soft like sea algae, and licked along my collarbone where new skin had formed. I moaned. Couldn't hold it in. You need it. Her voice rang in my head, silent yet clear. And so do I. She pulled me closer, her wet, supple body pressed tightly to mine. I could feel her breasts, not large but full and pulsing with an inner rhythm. Each heartbeat matched mine. We were synchronizing. My hand, trembling, reached up to her waist. Her skin was pliant, elastic, with just enough tension beneath to suggest firm muscle. She didn't pull away. In fact, she leaned in closer, her hips pressing into my thigh, and for the first time I felt her between her legs, moist, hot, alive. I opened my mouth, no words formed, and she kissed me. It wasn't a human kiss. Her tongue slid deep, no teeth, no saliva, only a dense, silky enzyme with a flavor like ripe fruit. I wanted to swallow it whole. Her mouth made me breathless, but I didn't want to pull away. She pushed me back into the soft membrane. Her legs slid over mine, straddling my hips. I looked up and saw those golden eyes. And then, she merged with me. No scream, no warning. She slid down onto me, enveloping me with her entire body like a second skin coming alive. My shaft didn't penetrate a tight cavity, but a living chamber, snug, wet, pulsating as if squeezing me from all directions. This wasn't sex. This was an act of absorption. Each thrust from her pushed enzyme deep into me, and I responded by driving into her even harder. Our bodies locked in a rhythm that felt like drowning in both ecstasy and terror. I no longer felt where I ended and she began. She was dissolving into me, and I was dissolving into her. When I climaxed, something exploded out from within me, not just semen, but raw life energy. I cried out, body convulsing. She lit up, her entire body glowing silver, emitting a faint trill like a deep-sea creature satiated and full. She looked down at me, and for the first time, she smiled, a smile both tender and lethal. The first bond is complete. I no longer knew who I was, only that from that moment on, I couldn't live without her. I didn't leave the biological cocoon for 3 days, or at least for what I could define as 3 days. On Elaris, time drifted like breath. There was no clear sun cycle, no nightfall, only waves of bioluminescent light that flickered and changed colors like the breathing rhythm of the planet itself. And I lay there, wrapped in layers of warm, soft membrane, my body still seeping enzymes from our first fusion. She never left me, always by my side, always touching. She said nothing, but her eyes did. Sometimes she looked at me like I was a fragile creature about to die. Other times, like I was a fresh, warm meal. And I couldn't resist her. At first, I thought it was just a survival reaction. A ritual, a healing protocol. But when the tremors began in my chest, when my hands twitched if she wasn't touching me, I understood. My body had changed. My brain had logged her into my nervous system as something essential. I was addicted. Not to sex, but to the feeling of having her close. Addicted to the silent touches. Addicted to the scent of her enzyme when she lay beside me. Her body half draped over mine like a living, damp, soft blanket. I started to seek her out. Every time she left the cocoon to gather organic material near the edges of the nest, I curled in on myself like a child who'd lost his mother. I gasped. I shook. My heartbeat spiked, my skin dried by the minute, starving for contact. But when she returned, all it took was a gentle stroke from the back of my neck down to my spine, and everything realigned. As if that single touch rebooted my entire biological system. And it didn't stop there. I started to want more. Not just healing, not just survival. I began to initiate. The first time she lay beside me, I didn't wait for her to begin. I kissed her neck, the softest part of her skin, and realized she responded. She moaned, a tiny sound, like enzymes sizzling faintly against heat, but I heard it and I kept going. I suckled lightly, then slowly licked down along her shoulder, over the curve of her belly, as smooth and supple as living silk. She had no navel, but in the center of her abdomen was a shallow, pulsing indentation, glowing faintly like a heartbeat. When my lips touched it, her body jolted. Enzymes oozed from tiny pores along her hips, drenching both of us. She rolled me beneath her, her body glowing brighter. This time, when she straddled me, every motion had shed the formality of a ritual. It was hunger. She was heavier than I expected. Her hips pushed down with force, riding me in powerful waves that drew gasps I couldn't suppress. Every descent felt like thousands of inner muscles squeezed around me, draining every drop of my strength. But I didn't want her to stop. My body no longer belonged to me. It existed to feel her, to drown in her, to dissolve into her again and again. We made love like beings who had forgotten what time was. Sometimes she kept me inside her for hours, without moving, just holding tight. Sometimes, she overwhelmed me so relentlessly that I couldn't even scream, just emit hoarse, broken sounds from my throat. But I didn't hate it. I craved it. The third night, or what I called a night, I asked her for the first time aloud, "Has anyone else ever bonded with you, like I did?" She looked at me. Her golden eyes reflected the enzyme light flickering from the cocoon walls. "No, only you. You alone. Forever." I shivered. I couldn't tell if it was pleasure or fear. But I didn't leave. I didn't want to leave. When I slept, I dreamed of her sliding into me, through my mouth, down my throat, dissolving into my chest, claiming every internal organ, turning into my blood, my heart, my very self. And when I woke, I wished the dream had been real. I began sensing things I had never been able to comprehend before. When she touched me, it wasn't just my skin that trembled. It was my thoughts. She could read what I was thinking, even perceive old memories of people I had loved, lost, hated. Once, when she placed her hand on my forehead and closed her eyes, I saw the image of my mother, who had died when I was 11. I had never told her that, but she had seen it. I asked her, How did you know?" She didn't answer. She simply pressed a fingertip to my lips, and a stream of imagery surged into me. Not words, but a cascade of biological memories, a method of communication more primal than language, deeper than thought. And I saw it, the evolutionary path of her kind. Her species had once been a form of high-order biolife. No language, no wars, no politics. They existed solely through connection bonding, not with members of their own species, but with organisms that carried different neurological structures. They didn't reproduce like we did. They survived by being felt, by merging with the sentience of another being. They had once spread across the entire planet Elaris. They lived symbiotically, never killing, but always needing. Every bond was a life cycle. But thousands of years ago, Elaris was struck by a magnetic storm that wiped out their enzyme-linked communication chains. Every other life form died, and her species, cut off from connection, slowly withered away in loneliness. She was one of the last. And I, a lone human who fell here by chance, possessed a neurological structure just compatible enough to reawaken her bonding system. When that process began, I finally understood why our first fusion drove me to the brink of madness with pleasure. Because to her, pleasure wasn't a luxury, it was fuel for survival. And every time we fused, I didn't just give her living enzyme. I gave her a piece of my consciousness. She devoured my memories, and I, in turn, began to absorb fragments of her. Some nights I dreamed I was swimming through glowing forests of Elaris, not with a human body, but as a soft, fluid life form, coiling through the air like a jellyfish drifting through plasma seas. I dreamed of tendrils sprouting from my back. I saw myself glowing and looking back at my reflection through her golden, translucent eyes. When I told her this, she wasn't surprised. She simply said one thing: "The bond has begun." I asked again, for the first time with a hint of fear in my voice, "What is the bond, really?" This time she didn't show me images. She whispered, her voice airy and distant, like wind slipping through enzyme chambers. "When an Elarian fully fuses with a compatible being, they cannot be separated without dying." I went still. "You mean if I leave you, you'll—" She nodded. "And me?" She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head either. She just lowered her gaze and gently touched her lips to my neck. "You've already changed, from the inside." I looked down at my hand. The skin still looked like mine, but underneath I could feel something taking root. Not plant roots, but enzyme-linked strands, winding through my nervous system, coiling around my spine, threading into my brain. I could feel her inside me, even when she wasn't touching me. I tried stepping outside for the first time, away from the nest. I only made it a few hundred steps before my breathing grew labored. Like I was running out of oxygen, like my sense of direction was dissolving. and when I collapsed, gasping for air, unable to take another breath, she emerged from the shadows of the enzyme forest. She said nothing, just knelt, pressed her forehead against mine. Immediately my lungs opened, my vision cleared, my body surged with energy as if someone had pumped lightning into my heart. And in that moment I realized a truth I could no longer deny. I was no longer human. Or if I still was, I had become a hybrid system with part of her living inside me, and I couldn't survive without it. But the most terrifying part wasn't that I had been claimed. It was that I no longer wanted to be saved. I wanted more. Deeper. Forever. I heard the ship's engines before I saw its lights. A sound that didn't belong to Elaris. Not biological. Something metallic, jagged, artificial. Like a long-buried memory suddenly unearthed from deep within my mind. I stood on a slope of enzyme-covered terrain, my skin faintly damp from the living atmosphere, and I felt every vibration moving through the air. That wasn't the wind. That was a rescue ship from the Union. I was supposed to be happy. I used to dream of this. Those searchlights piercing the thick haze, the familiar voices of crewmates, the safe embrace of a world I used to belong to. But now, as I turned and looked toward the nesting chamber, where she stood in the glowing mist, I wasn't sure if that world belonged to me anymore. I hadn't worn my flight suit in days. My skin was now covered by a thin layer of enzyme, nearly invisible in standard light but shimmering faintly to the eye, like amphibian skin. My vision had changed. I could see thermal waves, sense the pulsing of the living ground, and deeper still, I could feel the worry in her chest. Even though she stood still and said nothing, she knew. They had detected the biosignal. They were coming. They would take me away. I stepped toward her, each step sinking deeper into the roots of who I had become. She didn't move. Her sensory strands quivered faintly in the air, responding to the incoming ship's descent. "Are you afraid?" I asked, voice rough as if something was wrapped tightly around my throat. She didn't reply. She just raised her hand, touching my chest. Her fingers paused right over my heart. 1 beat. 2. Then she leaned forward and pressed her lips to it, kissing the place my heart lived, saying nothing. "You are my last flame." I trembled. Not from the wind, but from the knowledge that what I was about to do might kill her. The ship landed with a rush of displaced air. Its doors opened. A team of soldiers in gray bio-armor stepped out, weapons lowered, but their eyes were sharp. "Captain Daniel Rivera?" A woman's voice called out over comms. I stepped from the mist. They stared at me, didn't recognize me. One of them raised a scanner, a short beep. The data blinked on the handheld display. Status, unstable. Foreign enzyme integration, potentially transmissible. Isolation required. I didn't speak. The commanding officer gave a single nod. "Take him. We need a live sample of the enzyme for analysis." I backed away, breath tightening. "She's not something you can just take apart," I rasped. "She's not a weapon. She's a living being. She's what?" The commander cut in. "A biological threat? A neurological parasite? A creature manipulating a human mind through simulated pleasure and emotional dependency?" I didn't answer. Because deep inside, a part of me knew they weren't wrong. She had made me someone else. She made me dream with memories that weren't mine. She made me climax not from desire, but from biological merging, something that should never have existed between two species. But I also knew this. Nothing in my life had ever felt more real than the way she touched me. No one had ever held me like that. No one had ever known me, down to places even I didn't dare look into. A soldier approached. Closer. Too close. I looked at him, felt the hum of an energy weapon on his hip. And I ran. I bolted toward her, toward the nesting chamber, toward the place where everything began. I heard shouting behind me, the crackle of electric rifles powering up. She surged forward to meet me, pulling me into the living membrane. We fell into each other's arms, and I felt the enzyme flood through my body once more. This time not to heal, but to dissolve. We became one. I heard the screams from the rescue team as the biosynthetic membrane sealed behind us, burying us within the heart of Elaris. Their voices faded, but her heartbeat, no, our heartbeat, kept on pulsing. I don't know how much time has passed since we escaped the eyes of humanity and hid ourselves deep within the nesting chamber of Elaris. Here there is no day or night, no sun or moon cycles, only the soft pulse of bioluminescent light, rhythmic like the deep, slow breathing of the planet itself. My body is no longer the same. Beneath the skin that still resembles something human, there is a new network, soft, elastic, and gently glowing whenever touched by emotion. Each heartbeat now is no longer mine alone. It syncs with another, someone lying next to me, not quite human, not entirely her, but something that transcends species or definition. We don't speak much anymore. We don't need to. She touches me as if we were never apart, as if every day she needs to confirm that I'm still here, that I haven't dissolved, that I still belong to her. Her fingers glide gently along my spine, from the nape of my neck to the small of my back, sometimes pausing at my chest, where my heart now beats in a steady, shared rhythm. I turn to her, pulling her into my arms. No urgency, no frenzied craving, just need. Our lips find each other, slowly. It's not a kiss of fire, but a warm current flowing between two bodies so intimately familiar that there's no surprise left, only a quiet, wordless understanding. I can taste her enzyme, a faint, sweet scent brushing past my lips, teasing my tongue, arousing me not with brute desire, but with a longing that reached down into the soul. She slides over me, her body soft and warm, not alien anymore, but an extension of my own. We wrap around each other skin to skin, as if the space between us no longer exists. Every gentle motion, every shift of her hips, every shared breath, is a silent whisper in a language only the two of us understand. I can't fully describe what it feels like to be inside her. It's not climax, not sex, it is the feeling of returning. She doesn't cry out, doesn't moan, she simply presses her forehead to mine, eyes half closed, lips barely parted, as if murmuring something in a language no one but me could ever understand. Her hips move slowly, sometimes hardly at all, as if the harmony lies not in speed, but in the careful listening to the smallest waves between us. I slide my hand to her waist, then her shoulder, then gently into her hair, those soft sensory strands like seaweed, moist and glowing, curling around my wrist as if they're holding me there. We merge like this in a moment without shape, without boundary. One deep thrust, one long breath, one drop of enzyme leaking from the corner of her eye, like a tear. And I know she feels it too. Not just satisfaction, but a covenant written in flesh, blood, and trust. When we finally released each other, we simply lay there, not speaking, not thinking, just breathing as one. Still naked, but not vulnerable. Her chest rose and fell gently against mine. I placed my hand on her belly, where the pulse of her biosignature beats softly beneath smooth skin. She opened her eyes. "We're not two anymore," she whispered against my breath. I nodded. "Then what are we?" "Something the universe has never seen before," she said. "Half made of earth, half made of stars, a love that doesn't need a name." I looked toward the horizon, where Elaris continued to breathe, to live, and to hold us within its vast biological embrace. No more starships, no more armor, no more missions, only me and her and something that had just been born from the most ancient loneliness of the cosmos, and a bond no species could ever define.